Hello, my name is Greg George again, and today I wanted to do a freeform video tutorial um, on more of a sculpting workflow. So this is one that I haven't spent much time on, is blank screen design, or actually more like content creation type, because I'm not going to do pure blank screen design today, but just more of like from scratch type modeling and a couple different tools and things that go into how you would approach one of those products. I feel like sometimes we overlook because we do a lot of medical things with this product. But today I wanted to talk more about just modeling something from scratch. So today that's what we're going to go over. So we'll go ahead and, before this, I went ahead and I did a file new. And I said start with empty model. I always do that because that way I have this empty piece and it allows me to turn off all the other pieces. And for today, what I'm going to do is hit F2 to go to the front view, and I'm going to create a plane on the front plane there. And I'm going to go ahead with that front plane selected. I'm going to say go ahead and import to plane, and I'll go ahead and import an image. Now, today we're going to go ahead and just show how, we have lots of people that model stuff, and a lot of times you work off of a reference image. So you can import a model directly to a plane using this reference image. And you'll see that it is on the plane, like so. And one thing that I did different that's different from stock is I went into tools, options, and I went into objects, planes, and I changed the sketch image transparency here. By default, it's way down here, so it's a little harder to see. So I actually bumped it up because of this image here. It has a very low contrast to it, and it looked a little too washed out to see what I was looking at. So I went ahead and bumped that up, and then so I brought that in. So you can import images. Some people will actually create 3 orthogonal planes and take images from top, sides, and put them all in here and sculpt that way with those in the background. Another option that I'm using here is I have images off to the side of my screen on the other monitor that you can use, so you can follow along and try to create content that way, sketching over top of the image, and then also just looking off as a reference imagery for artists are used to doing that all the time. Another thing that I sometimes will do when I set up my original thing is I might sketch on this plane and draw a reference line and dimension it. So if this character needs to be 30 inches tall, then I would draw a 30-inch line and then scale the image up. So you can see down here below, I can change the width and height and scale and apply it that way. But for today, I am just going to leave it as is, as it comes in. But know that you can draw reference sketch entities and scale the image from there. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started and just kind of talk about how I would model over top of this. So for this, I'm going to try to use a variety of tools. Sometimes I may not use the best tool for that specific thing, but what I'm doing is just kind of showing a swath of different types of tools that would help you model. Whether it ends up being the best tool to create that specific thing is beside the point. So you'll see as I go the different collection of tools along the way. So to go ahead and get started, I'm going to go ahead and use the basic shapes here, and then grab the sphere, and then I'll use my H key and zoom in, and then you can use the plus minus keys to scale up and down, right? And then here I can say 12, maybe 13 or whatever, and I can type in the different dimensions here of the size. And then if I want to get my depth right, I can just poke through and come and design this right in front. And then once I have it, I can come in and change it a little bit, and then use the hand to move it around as well if I need to manipulate it and move it to the side. And then if I use this says create it as a new piece. Edge sharpness is the voxel resolution. I'm going to put it at 0.2 because this is kind of a small object. You can start higher than that and manipulate it that way. I may actually bump that down. I think it's a little high for what I'm going to do here. But you can see here that I went ahead and put that in front. And if I don't like the positioning of it, I can always come in and grab the this reposition piece here, and I can bump it forward. If I wanted to design it directly in front of it, I can. And I always kind of use my home view. The F2 is my home view. So I always come back to that F2 key and zoom out and move it around. So the first thing I'm going to do is one of my tools that I just love using, even though it's not really like a sculpting tool, is this lattice. And if I just come in and say realign, and then I just change it to like 2 by 2 by 2, and then rotate around. You can use this lattice tool and you can just drag this out. And you do have axis constraint movements. I'm not going to do it on this one just because there are instances why I want it to have a little organic, not perfect feel to it. So if I don't want to pull it exactly in the Z direction, I'll go ahead and just manipulate it that way to add a little human error to it, right? And then you can also re-topologize this where you can come in here and grab these different nodes and pull. So if you wanted to like give this like a little bit of a ridge to it. And let me just undo. Let's change it and then undo back to, let's do a 2 by 2 by 2 again. And we'll pull that direction. And you'll see if I do struggle with that, you can come back to take back what I said before and say, hey, I only want to pull in the z-axis, right? So if I come over here, you can even apply dimensions to it too, where it only goes in certain dimensions, like only use this ruler, snap to every millimeter or so. And then I'll just turn that back to dynamic and then go back to the 3 by 3 by 3. Like so. And, if I want to flatten that off a little bit, I can use these guys to pull that out. And you see I'm using undo if I mess it up. And just change this to none. So that way I can do all directions of freedom at once there. So snap to this, pull it down. And again, it's just kind of moving stuff around and trying to create a shape that I'm interested in making. So that's decent. So I'll go ahead and accept that by hitting apply and then getting out of this command. And there you go. Now, that is a good starting point. Now, the next thing, this is probably the most important tool for sculpting, is this tug tool. The tug tool will allow me now to come in and just grab and manipulate however I want to, right? Or I can just pull up, down. So in this instance, what I might do is shrink this down and start to pull up in these different directions, like that. Right, and again, using the F2 tool to come in and zoom. And you can actually design and use the mirror functionality or turn on dynamic mirror. But if you're trying to get a very organic, like very awkward looking character, like this is the way to do it, where you can come in and rough in the shape. You see right away. And then if I want to add a little more detail here, I can use the hot wax tool and kind of smooth stuff out. So come in and smooth. And then there is, actually, let's toggle back to the tug tool real quick and blow this up a little bit. Pull it out almost like that bottom. There we go. Check it from the front. So you see I drifted off to the side here. Give it a little more width. Like that. And there's going to be a lot more changes to this as we go, but this just kind of gives you a good rough in. So usually what you're doing here is you start to rough it in first, and then you keep moving from there, and you just keep coming back and adding more and more details as you go. So there we go, adding all kinds of. So there's my start for the head. So now I'll just show you a few different methods for how you can actually rough in the body. There's a few different things, different tools that you can use along the way. One of them is this add clay tool. So if you come down here, there's a bunch of different options down in the toolbox. You can come into basic shapes, which we already used, and then add clay. Add clay by default has a sphere option where you can just click and toggle back to sphere option. Click and you can just add spheres. Or you can do this ice cream cone method. So if I go back to, again, that home view, and I toggle over to ice cream cone, and I go up inside and come down and create that shape there, you can just kind of draw and it will snap to its old location too. And you see here, so if I go to the side, hit F2 and go to the side, and I'm going to turn off create in new piece. I want to go ahead and leave it and create there like that. You can rough stuff in that way. Now, it also has the ability to go plus minus where you go up and down. That's why they call it the ice cream cone, actually. Is to use the plus minus keys to add material that way. So that's one way. Some people will use that and kind of rough an entire shape. Another method is using the curves. So if I go to the front view and I come in and I just click, zoom out, and I'm just going to click again and then end it right there. So I just created a curve straight down in 3D, and I just moved my haptic down. I can come back, and I can grab that curve, and I can even add nodes to it if I want to. So I can come in and say plus minus, add a curve node right there. And then, if I want to turn that off, I can move it to the side. I can just drag these curves around in 3D using my haptic. So once I have that curve, one thing that I can do with it is I can use the pipe tool, and then I can set a size to it. So if I say 3 millimeters, and then it'll just merge in unless I turn this on. And here I just created that. And then just like before, come over to the hot wax tool and smooth stuff in together. And then you can even use the plus minus add material, smooth add, crank it up a little more. Crank it up a little more. There we go. That's what I want to build this up. And if you look at it from the front view, and you can kind of use your judgment there, and then you could, build up a little elbow there and just kind of rough it in that way, and then switch back to just regular smoothing for this. So that's one way, is using that method where you're just using the curve with pipe. You could also come in and use the curve I'm going to end it again, and then we'll rotate it to the side to check it. It's a little bit forward, but that's fine. I kind of want it to look kind of natural. And then, like you said, like I did before, click on my curve, add a node to it, add a little bit of bend to it so it's not perfectly straight, like that. And then instead of using pipe, we can come over. There's another one that's a little more elaborate here. Curve spheres, where I can grab that. I can select the curve. I can select that curve, and then I can hit apply, turn on. And then the curve spheres is interesting because you have this brush, and as I click, it will shrink. It'll shrink the size of the spheres that are along the curve. If I hold shift, it'll blow the spheres up a little, like that. And then if I hold command, actually let's show control first. Control will equalize. So if I have like some spheres that are like immediately get bigger, this will kind of like uh, this will kind of equalize the difference in radius between the two by holding control. It makes them nice and uniform. And then alt makes them smooth and adds more and more and more and more curves. So it makes it really smooth. And then again, you can keep going with it. I can make it bigger and bigger, or add a little more there, a little more there. And just keep going, and you go crazy with it, right? So after I do that for a while, bake it in by hitting this, and it will add it in. So you see there, and then just like I did before, come back over to my hot wax, do my blends. Like you don't have to do this. It's probably better just to come in and kind of rough your shape in and make sure everything is to scale how you want it scaled first, and then come back and add some of these details. But sometimes it's just fun to go ahead and add those now while you're thinking of them, just kind of roughing it in. Right? So that's another method. Another one that people will do is just using sketching in a sketch plane. So if I come in and I create another, if I just hit F2, create another plane, and then I move my plane to the right depth, somewhere around there, and then you just say I want to sketch on it, and I could do the whole body this way actually. This way it's probably the most efficient just to lay it out fast, and then you can bend and articulate uh, the areas that you want later. But with this one, you would come in and just use your sketching tools and draw right on here. So I would come in and I would draw curves there. It's kind of hard to see. And then I could, and I'm purposely kind of adding extra there. Adding a little extra organic flair there by. So there's what I drew. Kind of hard to see. I should turn out the other plane there so you can see it. And then once I get out of the sketch mode, there's a tool over here where you can say copy from sketch, where I could say grab all these curves and make 3D curves out of them. And then we'll just turn off the sketch plane so you can see I just made these. Now they're 3D curves. I pulled them from the sketch. And then toggle back over to the curve spheres, right? So if I say curve spheres from all of these, set, right? And then this is why I did this, because the body is a little wider. Like that. And again, you can kind of come back and smooth and add material, add more resolution there. And again, I can make those their own separate pieces if I want to. Some people like to keep objects as separate pieces as they go. I tend to do that a little bit more, where I do that where I'll make them different pieces um, and keep them around just in case I need them as separate objects. But for the sake of today, we'll go ahead and leave it like it is. And then you can come back and use some smoothing tools. And those tug tools. Just give it a little more crazy shape to it. And then always make sure to be looking back at your reference images, you know, because as I look here, you can see here, give it a little more width there. And then hot wax is a great way to just kind of layer on and add material. And then you can use the tug tool almost to like scale and move things around a little bit, right? So if I want these guys to look a little different, kind of move things up or down, I can use it with a nice large size brush to manipulate that body. So now the hips. Well, first let's smooth them out a little bit. Come over here, just add a little. There we go. And one way I thought of doing these is kind of just to remember that you do have these types of tools here where you can come over and use primitive shapes, right? So I can come over and use this primitive shape here, shrink that down. And if you have to, you can always turn on this inchworm. So that cuts in half the ratio of how far you move how far you're moving the haptic versus how much it moves the. See how it moves nice and slow now? So there I can, now in this instance I'm going to say create it as its own separate new piece right here as a point 2, hit apply. So there I have that piece. And then I can come over just to the reposition piece and just kind of move it around, put it in that hip area because it's got these weird hip bones here. And then instead of mirroring it, again, I can mirror it. It's not a problem. I just want this to be like it is in the image over there where it's very organic shape. So you see here that I mirrored the piece, so I can come back over to reposition piece. And I'm going to turn off the inchworm so I can manipulate a little faster here. And then you can turn that back on if you're just trying to bump it around and move it a little slower. Like that. You see it's a little forward, so bump it back. And here's how you can merge pieces together. So you can come over and select all these and say combine into. So now they're merged into one piece, and then jump in and start using my hot wax tool again, where I might add some material in here and then switch over to just general smoothing. Maybe grab the tug tool again. Now, because it's close to the arm and the arm is the same piece, you got to be careful you don't start tugging on that part as well. Just kind of sculpting and making it look crazy. And you see here that I did accidentally connect it on that side. Not a big deal, we can separate that. And then we'll come over and a little more smoothing. So that was how I thought about doing some of that hip. Now over here, let's do the add material. It does have like some kind of like rib to it. There we go. It's almost like alien abs. Again, I'm just trying to eyeball whatever I feel like doing, however I may want to make it look. And rough it in. Now for the arms and the fingers, right, you can you could go back to some of the same things that we had before. One of the things that I did think about is I can come in and just change the clay coarseness and bump this up to like 0.15 or 1.4. I'll just keep that. Um, you could. There are some people that would create the fingers and stuff just by using the tug tool. You can accidentally grab the wrong tool there. Come over and shrink this down. And you can just keep adding material that way and then growing it out. Another thing you can do is sculpt with ball. I can pop to the inside. So I could pop to the inside of the shape here. And sculpt that way. Ice cream cone would probably be a really good way to do it, actually. So if I do this, shrink it down. To create that, oops, undo, and make sure I snap to that surface there. Like that. Now let's go to the front view. Snap to it. Like that. I could actually leave that so it merges these off. Um, Even if I did do exactly what I did where I left it, I can just do the whole Boolean combine into. So now that is all one, and then make sure I bump up the clay coarseness to 0.15. So that's a way you could do those fingers, create nice creepy looking fingers. So I'm not gonna probably complete every single thing here today on this call. But what I can do is I'll just show all of the different methods, and then I might make a follow-up. So let's do combine into, and do 1.5. There we go. And then so once I did that, I'll go ahead and do like a blend on the neck here. And then we'll actually, instead of doing that, we'll smooth a little more. Go from there. And there's lots of things you can do. Like I could actually manipulate the whole head forward or backwards and just kind of move it around um, using either the tug tool or the lattice deform, because you can say with the lattice deform, I could say to F2 front view realign. Um, let's change it to 2 by 2 by 2. And then you can do this edit box, right? And edit box, I can just move this up and we'll just turn off my, there we go. So now once I get my edit box over to where I want, I can toggle back to deform. And then now I can kind of rescale and move it back to where I want it to. And I can just reblend that if I need to. And then actually, if we do 3 by 3 by 3, I could pull that down, but it's all right. I'll keep it there and then reblend my neck here. And again, using the tug tool, I'm just going to reset some proportions here. Look at it from the front view. Just do a little bit of work up here. And now let's add some more detail now. And then here. All right, so there is roughing that in now. some of the other things that you can do that I wanted to talk about is, like, let's say that you had it roughed in to where you wanted it to be, right? This is how you wanted it set. Um, you can come over and actually start to add some texture and some deviation and stuff to it. So I can come over and go through my textures. And you could kind of texture things more near the end, but if you're just trying to add a little, mix a little bit of inspiration in as you go, you grab some of these textures like this. And I'm not going to be real particular about how that is, right? And then you can hit preview, bake it in there. And again, I'm going to be a little bit crazy with it. Just apply it and just kind of just add some craziness to it. And I'll come over here, and I purposely leave in some of this stuff, right? Just because it just makes it look interesting and just creates some stuff. And even if I don't accept or keep all of that texture from what I originally apply, it still gives it some more interesting look to it, right? So there, adding some texture is really neat. And you can do that with a bunch of different textures in here. So that was just one texture. As you cycle through these, lots of interesting things. Cracked canvas, actually. And then I can switch my brush back to something else like this to erase. So turn that on and then come over to erase. I want to erase some of that. Or actually just keep it. Like, it looks neat, interesting. Apply some of that texture. That's crazy. So yeah, we got that crack. This leather. Let's try some of this. And again, I'm purposely leaving a lot of this because again, it just creates stuff that's going to add more interesting detail to it that then I'll fix, right? I'll just come back and I might not keep that much actual detail to it, right? I'll just so the texture just helps kind of just add so much complexity to it. And that's where, like, if you do keep them at separate pieces, like, again, I'm doing kind of a quick tutorial, just kind of freewheeling it here. It does make it easier to apply those textures to only one area or only one piece if you do leave these as separate for a little longer and then apply it. So that's how I'd go go about applying some of that texture. Now I would come in and just add more and more and more and just keep going. But one other thing I wanted to show is like if I was going to do the eyes, use the curve tool like that. And then again, if I want to manipulate these and move them around, slightly different looks to it, I can do that. And then an interesting tool is the ability to tug an area that's defined by a curve, this tug area. So with that, you can click on it and say, I want to tug the interior like that. Like so. And then go back to tug area. These two guys right there. And a similar thing can be done with the mouth as well. I could come over and the mouth seems to be more of like a round, something like that. Use the pipe tool this time. Like that. And I'm just going to bump it down to like 0.1 now. And then just start sculpting even more on it. So if I come around and let's change this around a little. There we go. That's more like what I want to do. Turn off all those curves. Add more and more textures. Go around, add more details, and just keep refining and refining. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to show. These are sculpting tools, just kind of adding and creating. And you see, I chose something a little bit different on the mouth, but both of the sculptures had slightly different mouths on them. So I'm kind of going off of multiple pictures of this thing. So you can see here, I may finish this and make a little brief update video that shows the final project. But just for today, I just wanted to take something interesting and just show how you can use the model creation tools. Not perfect, but it is kind of interesting to show how you can do this. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or comments.